This episode of the Aquarius Podcast is sponsored by Aquarium Co-op and their amazing all-in-one fertilizer, Easy Green. If you're like me and love planted tanks but weren't born with an aquatic green thumb, Easy Green is the stuff for you. Easy Green is super easy to dose, and I use it in all of my planted tanks, both high and low-tech setups. I follow the instructions on the bottle, and the results are healthy, vibrant plants. I know so many other aquarists who swear by Easy Green, and their tanks look amazing. You can even go back to previous episodes of this podcast where you hear several guests talk about their experience and love for this stuff. So head on over to aquariumcoop.com, drop some Easy Green in your cart, and use the code Aquarius5 at checkout to receive 5% off your order. And if you needed it, Corey has numerous videos on the Aquarium Co-op YouTube channel where he talks all about Easy Green, how to use it, and shows off his own tanks at home and in the store that are thriving on the stuff. Lastly, if you're enjoying the podcast, share the show with your friends, leave a rating wherever you listen to the episodes, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Now, on to the interview. Today's date is Monday, October 29th, 2018. My guest today is Jeff Miotke. Jeff is a competitive aquascaper who has competed around the world and also serves as a judge when not competing. Jeff has had articles published in the Aquatic Gardeners Association magazine and gives presentations at fish clubs across the country. Recently, Jeff and the members of Team Dysfunctional took first place in the large tank category during the Aquascaping Live contest at Aquatic Experience 2018. So Jeff, welcome to the Aquarius Podcast.
Thank you, Randy. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and I'm happy to have you on. I mean, you are you're riding high right now. You're a champion. You and your team, like I said in the intro, you guys took the first place, large tank category at Aquascaping Live contest, and the tank that you guys put together was absolutely fantastic. So congratulations.
Thank you very much, Randy. We started that process pretty much the day after we didn't rank last year.
Nice. So that's a lot of motivation coming off of last year's competition. So before we go down that path and that journey, I want to hear more about who Jeff Miotke is. Can you go back to your earliest memories? How did you get started in tropical fish keeping? Because I certainly don't think it was putting together first place winning aquascapes.
No, it wasn't. I started way back when. I grew up on a lake. And we had a family friend that did a lot of fish keeping, and he set me up with my first aquarium, and that aquarium was filled with fish and plants from the lake. So I guess my first tank was a biotope.
Oh, that's awesome. So a native, and I would assume a tank that then you're not needing a heater or anything like that. So if you don't mind me asking, like native to which part of the country?
I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I grabbed the sand, the plants, caught the minnows, some little bluegills, and put my first tank together.
Oh, that's awesome. And so how did that tank do?
It did really well. The fish ended up going back into the lake after several months, but I actually did freshwater clams too, and of course those didn't last. And you have all these nice fish in the lake, but then you get hooked on the tropicals, neons, and the other colorful tetras.
And what was your experience? Your first experience getting the tropical fish?
I don't remember. I just remember that having a family friend, breeding fish, had a lot of access to many different fish. I do remember angelfish being my favorite.
Very cool. Yeah, angelfish are pretty awesome. That's one fish that I have not kept, and I don't want to tease too much, but I think that's one that I should be having here in the next couple months. So definitely something that is on my list to get. I never thought that I would get the angelfish, but enough about me. So I guess kind of take me on your journey then, right? So you start getting into tropical fish. Does multiple tank syndrome bite you at a young age, or are you able to kind of keep it in control and keep it at like a one tank minimum, or a one tank max, I should say?
Yeah, I've never really had an issue with multiple tank syndrome. I've always focused on one or two tanks and do those tanks very well.
Yeah. I'm the opposite. I think like many of us, we are afflicted by the multiple tank syndrome, and we do a lot of tanks, and we just kind of do them just well enough to let the fish survive and maybe have some plants growing in them. So cheers to you on self-control.
Thanks.
As you're progressing, I mean, I'm relatively new to aquascaping. I feel like aquascaping is a relatively new segment of the hobby. Did you always have kind of this passion to put together planted tanks then?
I really didn't. I would say the aquascaping passion I have today.
All right, everybody. So we had to switch over from a Google Voice call to calling Jeff's cell phone. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but nonetheless, we are still bringing you the Aquarius podcast free of charge. So, Jeff, let's talk about the aquascaping part of your journey. So, how did you get into aquascaping?
Okay, yeah, great. So I was doing aquariums on and off for a long time. About maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I did have a planted tank, one of the good old 55-gallon, 4 foot by 1 foot by whatever, 22 inches tall. At the time, the planted tank was looking okay, but stumbled across Takashi Amano's works. Like so many aquascapers, I saw those books. I looked at his pictures, looked at my tank, looked at those pictures, and I said, I'm doing this wrong. So that was the beginning of my journey.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, I mean, that Takashi Amano, I haven't read that book, but when you just see the inspiration and what he's done, and like I said, what's been inspired from that, it's absolutely awesome. So, it's hard for me to look. I like to call my tank kind of a jungle theme because it's so overrun, but I know deep down that if I did aquascaping, I really would want to do things that are more in line with the principle or more in line with something like what Mr. Amano was doing. So you get this book, you start getting this inspiration. I mean, continue to kind of build. Like, how did you get from that point with the book to where you are now? Like, how much trial and error and practice and, plants did you have to go through?
Yeah, so I sold that 55-gallon off immediately, and hooked myself up with a nice 90-centimeter rimless tank, and got all the bells and whistles. I dove head first, at that point, I just started studying. My first aquascape was it was a disaster. I put the sand in too thick. The planting choices I picked ended up like a jungle. It was no good. So, I just continued to study at that point and practice, and just improve my skills slowly but surely. Back then, the internet really did not have a whole lot of, training materials or guides or just, photos of how to do some of these, aquascapes, even just like, how to get the slope in the soil, just real basic techniques. Just, it wasn't shared back then. So it was a struggle at first.
And was it just in the one tank that you were experimenting, or did you have any friends that would let you kind of guinea pig and play around with their tanks?
It really was that one tank. I did end up getting a couple of nano tanks at that point to practice, because what I found out really quickly was practicing in a 90-centimeter tank was expensive and very time consuming. So, trying this, trying that was not the way to go as far as a large tank. So, I made a lot of my mistakes early on in those smaller tanks, and that really accelerated my learning process.
I mean, so let's talk about some more of those learning mistakes and kind of the, what you have gleaned from those experiences to where you are now. Is there anything that is just really, really glaring that sticks out that now if you went back, like you kind of shake your head at?
Pretty much all of it. It's pretty amazing. Through, trial and error, I think the first thing I learned from doing all of that was how to grow the plants well. I've been growing plants for a long time, but never growing plants well. And learning how to grow the plants well was really key to becoming a good aquascaper. Without those plants, you really have no palette to create that aquascape.
Mm-hmm. So maybe not, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but, what are your thoughts on, we look at these aquascaping tanks and they're visually incredibly stunning tanks, but then you'll hear somebody kind of chime in and say, well, that's not really a sustainable tank, or that's not really a tank that you would set up at home. Do you think that there might be some people on the aquascaping circuit, and by all means, I'm not trying to call anybody out, but just, conceptually we're talking here, that maybe they don't understand those fundamental principles, and the plants that they're always working with are ones that are just straight out of, a package. They stuff them into some soil, stuff them into a hardscape, and then they're done, and then the tank gets torn down?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, especially in competitive aquascaping, the tanks, the aquascapes, they tend to be flipped fairly quickly. And usually that's because the aquascaper only has one or two tanks to set up competitively. So they need to flip it if they want to enter more than one aquascaping competition. A lot of the contests will only allow you to submit to their contest. So if you submit to another contest, you'll be disqualified. So, just the nature of the competitive aquascaping that happens. Now, as far as the complexity, that absolutely can shorten the life of an aquascape. It really comes down to the aquascaper's skills. A lot of folks will see like a tank. I've heard this comment many times. Oh, that's just a moss scape. What they don't realize, moss is one of the hardest plants to keep, maintained in a tank. It's just a pain to keep it trimmed, looking nice. The cuttings sink. You have to siphon them out. They'll get mixed in with your foreground plants, and you'll be picking out of there forever. And you can lose an aquascape pretty quickly.
Oh, interesting. So then, at home, resources are limited. So how do you kind of control that urge to, you set up an aquascape, or even during your process of learning, you set something up. How long would you leave that aquascape up for before you needed to tear it down and experiment and try a different style or try something different?
Yeah, I like to give myself 4 to 6 months if I'm going to do a competitive aquascape. And during that process, in my earlier days, sometimes I would set up and it wouldn't turn out like I envisioned and knock it down. It might be a month, it might be 2 months, and I'll just start from scratch and then just, try to put it back together using the same plants. So I still have the maturity of the plants and try to meet that deadline. I have not missed a deadline in competitive aquascaping yet, so I'm very fortunate there. One of my best rankings back in 2016 for the IAPLC, which is the International Aquatic Plant Layout Contest. It's I would say that it's the most prestigious contest that's been around very long. It is the one that is hosted by Aqua Design Amano, so Takashi Amano's company. And so in that year, I set up, knocked down 3 times. I was running out of time. I just remember I was doing some maintenance on the tank, and it just wasn't happening. So it was on a Sunday where my wife and I were watching football, and we're in the middle of a game or something. It's halftime. I go into my office. I do some trimming, and I just unraveled the tank. I'm like, I need to move a little bit, a little there, and it just fell apart on me. And so before you know it, I pretty much had half the tank on the floor. No tarps, no buckets, nothing. And I just remember my wife Amy coming in, and she goes, "Are you coming back?" And I just shrugged at her, just pointing, and she's like, "What did you do? It smells like a swamp in here. Open the window." And I just remember I was at such a low at that point. I'm going, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. And opened the window and, got some tarps and towels out or whatever, watched the game for a little bit, came back and struggled with it again. She just comes back and she's just like, give it a rest. Just pick up all that stuff and just throw it back in the tank. I did that, and I was probably 2 months out from the contest deadline. And the next day, I took it back out, put it back together, and ended up with my best IAPLC ranking ever.
Wow.
So, yeah, yes. So you never know. You just got to keep at it.
So what do you think happened with, you set it down, you walked away from it, you were let your mind was able to kind of reset. Although I feel like if it were me, my mind would be racing until I went back to that tank to work on it. What do you think? What did you do that you believe contributed?
Inspiration just struck.
Okay.
You just never know when it's gonna click for you, and it just I was refreshed in the morning, and I was darned if I was going to miss the deadline, and I just put my mind to it, and inspiration struck, and just all clicked. So yeah, I was fortunate because it could have easily went the other way.
So maybe I misunderstood, but so if you're putting together a tank, and then I'm assuming this is one where you take a picture of your tank and you submit it that way, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you're setting up a tank 6 months, or a few months before the actual competition deadline. Is that advantageous to then have a lot of plant growth? Or do you find competitors that will slap something together at the last at the last minute, if you will, so that way they have a tank that is algae free, I guess. So I guess one of my issues would be, man, if I set this thing up in a few months, if I'm not on it, every single day or every week with my parameters, I may have an algae explosion or something like that. And I would assume that is an undesirable trait in these kinds of competitions. So, typically, do you see most people setting up tanks?
Yeah, there's no tolerance for algae, really. Really, once you're into competitive aquascaping, you've mastered growing plants and controlling the environment, keeping a very healthy aquarium, very balanced. So you're not dealing with algae day in, day out. It happens. It happens to everybody, and you need to know how to treat it, the different types of algae. And that is part of that's part of aquascaping is, keeping the algae at bay. Most of my startups, I've been fairly fortunate and not had to deal with many algae problems. So as you practice and really understand what you're doing in that aquarium, you'll have less and less algae problems. It's to the point now where it's very rare that I'll have an algae outbreak. And it all goes to how you set it up, the plants that you select. Tissue culture these days is very great because you're not getting algae spores on your plants. So controlling your light, controlling your fertilizers, your filters, keeping the filters clean, keeping the aquarium environment clean, keeping the plants trimmed, all keep algae at bay. So I would say probably the majority of aquascapers out there that are doing this competitively are not having algae issues day in, day out.
Oh, interesting. And so what role then do you think livestock play in the aquariums when you're doing in an aquascaping competition?
Yeah, it depends on the contest. For example, the IAPLC, it's half the score. So it's extremely important. Something like the live contest that we had at Aquatic Experience, much less so.
Yeah, I noticed that the plants, the plants, I guess I would say, were definitely front and center. The aquascape, the hardscape, the layout of the tanks, and then whether or not the livestock was included was kind of a secondary matter. I don't think much people were paying attention to that. I certainly wasn't in the ear of the judges. But in your personal take, I mean, if you were to design a competition, what kind of balance would you strike? How important would you personally want the livestock to be in your competition?
I think the way IAPLC does it, where it's half the score, where the environment has to be conducive to that fish, is a critical component, because in the end, these are still aquariums, and an aquarium without fish or other critters like shrimps and other invertebrates is just a sad aquarium.
that I would agree with that statement. What do you look for when you go to add in either inverts or fish into one of your aquascapes? I mean, what are some of the hard principles that Jeff follows when he puts in livestock?
Yeah, I still rely on others to help me out with that. I think that's one area I need to grow a lot as far as selecting the livestock. Typically, I've been going with schools of tetras or shoals of tetras. They're very much a aquascaping standby, not standby, but typical choice. If you look at most of the competitive aquascaping inner tanks in the contest, year after year after year, they're very much the same fish.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely see myself as, if all else, I would be going with a Cardinal Tetra school in there, knowing that they just kind of hang out more so than schooling together tightly. But, I think it's kind of hard to beat a Cardinal Tetra, especially if you're going for anything like a, viewer or fans choice award. I think that those are always a fan favorite.
Yeah, they're very bright. Their bodies are big enough to show up. You would be surprised at how easily a fish or even a shoal of fish will disappear in aquascape when it's very complex. So you're looking for contrasting colors. You're also looking at the shape of the fish, the body shape of the fish. Is it, a taller fish? Is it an elongated fish? Does it need swimming room? What type of plants are in there? Does it make sense for that fish to be in there? So there's a lot to do with that, and it's just a very important thing to consider. And many aquascapers these days are considering the fish first before they put the aquascape together.
Oh, that would be a very interesting kind of perspective to take on it. Like I would think that not that they would come last, but I certainly wouldn't put the livestock first and then try to design around that. Do you think that's for more the biotope purposes, or just, hey, using the Cardinal Tetra as our standard example, here's this really beautiful blue and red fish, what could I design around it that, again, may not be its biotope, because the leaf litter and tannins probably won't win you a competition. But so I guess, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, as far as picking the fish, I think it is important to have what fish in mind before designing the aquascape. It definitely is an advanced way to look at it. So, from that aspect, I think it is a must in today's contest. The contest, the competition is just amazingly fierce. If you look 10 years back, you would just be like, those are nice, they're okay. But if you look at them today, they're mind blowing. They're just showstoppers. And I'm sure the very top rank down to, the very bottom rank is very, very tight in points.
Yeah, I hear the same thing said about the shrimp competitions that we have now, that if you look at like the shrimps that we had in, and I'm not trying to hijack our aquascaping competition talk by any means, but the shrimp entered in this year's Aquatic Experience Shrimp Contest would, the ones that didn't place would have taken first place, 3 years ago. So to hear that, you see the same kind of things in the aquascaping world. I mean, for me, one of my, passions is growing the hobby more, and hearing that in shrimp contests, now in aquascaping, I mean, we just continue to raise the bar year and year. So to me, that's good, right? The hobby's growing, it's getting more competitive. Hopefully more people are getting involved in these various aspects. So that's a really positive thing to hear. From your, I guess, what's on your list next in terms of designing a tank around livestock, or what would you like to design a tank around?
I would love to share with you, but I'm going to keep it under wraps for now.
Okay, no worries. I think we
can talk about it in a year from now. How's that?
That sounds good, Jeff. But you are definitely you're definitely thinking about it, and you're definitely doing something in that direction. So
every day,
cool.
Yes,
so
yes,
any aspiring aquascapers out there, take Jeff's kind of advice and take your aquascaping game to the next level and pick a fish and aquascape around that. So very cool. So now let's talk very specifically about your journey, your team's journey for the 2018 Aquascaping Live competition that we just had, that you took first place at Aquatic Experience. So when did that start, and just kind of walk me through that journey?
Yeah, our journey started the day after that we didn't rank last year. And it was in Chicago, and my teammates, Rich Valerio, Chuck Branch, and Jerry Job, we were disappointed, and quite honestly, I didn't think we deserved a place because we were unprepared. Just we winged it, and though we did a pretty nice tank, it's just tough. The competition level is just very high, so you have to prepare. So we started the day after. They asked me if I would take creative lead again. I said, sure, I'd be happy to. But this coming year, we're going to do it 100% my way. We're going to do this completely prepared. We're going to get together and we're going to build this aquascape out and grow it out, and then we're going to bring it in, and then we're going to finish off there, and everything's going to be planned. So so we did that, and because we were so unprepared last year, the team dysfunctional. I just said, man, guys, we're just dysfunctional, and it just stuck.
Very nice. So let me stop you right there. What part of the 2017 experience did you feel like you guys were dysfunctional and that you really weren't planning things out? I mean, did you just kind of show up with a box of goodies and you said, hey, here's what we have to work with? It's kind of a mystery bag of plants and hardscape.
That's exactly what we did.
Okay. And
so the thing is, we live in different cities. So we didn't discuss it. We didn't bring everything we were supposed to bring. I mean, just pretty much anything we could have done to sabotage ourselves, we did. I've been aquascaping for quite a while and have had a lot of success. I figured, I guess a little ahead of myself, and figured, I'll pull something out of the hat. And you know what? If you don't have the stuff, you aren't pulling something out of the hat. So that's how we ended up as a team dysfunctional. And then this year we did a 180-degree flip. So I actually met my teammates out in Dallas, and we had a great weekend. It was just a lot of fun. So we did, a lot of aquascaping, hanging out, joking around, having a few cold ones, and it was just a whole lot of fun. And then my teammates screwed out in Dallas, and then we met back up in New Jersey here. Was it last weekend? The weekend before? And, it made the process a lot smoother. We could enjoy the time there, because we weren't so stressed out trying to put something together. We had a plan, we executed the plan, and it worked out. And, if you're going to do live, that's what you need to do. You need to show up prepared.
Yeah, so let's try a little exercise here. So obviously this is just an auditory experience only, and that the people, everybody listening to this, I'll have links into in the show notes so that you can go and check out Team Dysfunctional's first place tank that won at Aquatic Experience. But give me, in your best words, try to describe this tank to us, and then we can kind of go from there to talk more about it.
So this year we wanted to do a showstopper, and then we also needed to make it very mobile. The aquascape was built in June, and we had to assemble it in New Jersey in October. So we decided to do a style popularized by the Indonesians. It's a jungle style. So it is mainly a woodscape with vine-like branches. So every one of the main branches had a lot of detail work on it, thin roots that were glued onto that wood to make it look like vines, to make it look like jungle. And then a lot of epiphyte plants, a lot of anubias, a lot of booths. Trying to remember what else we used on there. There were very many varieties of those two plants. And then pull all that together. So our aquascape was actually in 4 pieces, and we used screws and glue to keep it together because of all of the travel that we knew it would have to go through. So we picked plants that would travel well, and then also materials that were light and strong so that it would make the trip.
Yeah, and I can't say enough just how stunning this tank is. Obviously, again, to reiterate, it took first place in this competition, and the other tanks that were entered, every single one of them was a winner in their own right, and were absolutely gorgeous and things that were beyond my ability. But your tank,
The
though,
competition
yeah,
definitely was high.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Ben Williams and Balin Shaw's teams, they did such a fantastic job and made me so happy to see them there. Gazanfar for Guapa too, his concept was spectacular. When I saw it starting to come together, I was like, uh-oh, everyone brought it this year.
Yeah, definitely. But I will say though, I think you guys did hit it right on the head. And when you said that you guys wanted a showstopper, I think it was very hard to just kind of glance over all the tanks at once to not immediately have your eyes drawn back and focus on your tank. I mean, it just has this very, and I think this is indicative of that Indonesian jungle style that you're talking about, but it has this whimsical, fun, Avatar. Granted, I've never even seen the movie Avatar, but I've watched Fern Gully, and that's close enough. But it's this very whimsical kind of jungle feeling to it. In this particular picture that I'm looking at right now, this still, whichever, did you guys end up using neon tetras or those green neons?
Yeah, they're green neons. So we had
Okay.
a show of green neons. We also had picnic cories in there on the bottom, red cherry shrimp, and we had hatchetfish at the top. So all of those openings and swim-throughs at every level of the tank had some type of livestock going through it, and I think that really set it apart. It's funny to me, the tank does not photograph well. You really had to be there in person, or that second alternative is video. The tank itself does not photograph well, but to see it and all the critters swimming through it and that, it really did capture the public's eye. We ended up with People's Choice, which meant as much to me as the first place.
Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely bragging rights in their own respects too. Just this picture though. So I'll link that. I'll try and find some good videos on YouTube to link as well of maybe some people that did a good job of capturing this tank in motion. But yeah, I mean it is absolutely stunning. These green neon tetras were a fantastic choice. Just in this still, really two nice kind of balls of neon tetra school, so they look awesome. If you wouldn't mind kind of walking me through, what kind of wood are you guys using? So if somebody wanted to imitate this at home for their own aquascape, what does it kind of go through to make one of these pieces of wood that, kind of the main jungle trunk, if you will?
Yeah, well, we had sponsors, and they sent us spiderwood at a request, and the pieces all ended up because we received this through the mail, so we didn't actually get to pick it out. All the pieces were on the small side, unfortunately. So a lot of the pieces you see there for the main tree structures coming up were actually a combination of like 4 or 5 pieces of spiderwood. So we had to take those pieces of spiderwood and kind of fit them together to get a trunk feel, and then really go after it with the hand shears to take off the extraneous parts and pieces. And then we screwed it together, and then we glued on the roots. The roots were from Chuck and Rich. They have their own aquarium company, and they imported them. I'm not quite sure what kind of roots that they were, but they do have them for sale. And there was my first time to work with them, and quite frankly, I thought it was quite a challenge. I didn't think it would be that hard. It gave me a new respect for the Indonesian style.
Yeah, how many man hours would you roughly swag went into each one of those main trunks?
Probably 4.
Yeah, so I mean that's
with the planting.
that's still
probably 4.
That's still a good amount of work though to dedicate. I could just tell that it's something that would also be very tedious to do as well. Like it's not just straight like physical hard manual labor. Like it looks like there's a lot of kind of delicate hand holding, getting things in the correct position, and then securing it together.
Yeah, and then that's the trick. Because if you're just doing your tank in your house, it's not that big of a deal. But if you got to drive it 26 hours, it better hold together. And we did have some breakage we had to fix on site, but by and large it was intact.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And then on the in kind of the background left half of the tank, you've got this kind of I think it's a boost. It's either the boost or a smaller Anubias leaf, but it's almost like cradled, right? Like I don't know if you know exactly what I'm talking about, but you've got some kind of swinging branches, and then the background it steps up a little bit, and it just looks like this, kind of treehouse cradle of a large piece of boost or Anubias. And I think it's so cool, right? Like the kind of tunnel vision that you get from all the vines, kind of a canyon cave feel. But there's just something about this cradle of boost that just looks really, really attractive.
Yeah, we really spent a lot of effort in that area because we knew it would be the focal point and the opening was there. We really wanted to build up some depth. So when you look into the tank, it feels like it's a lot deeper than it is. So we did spend a lot of effort there. That right piece was our main piece.
So what are you guys doing? Are you guys like Google hanging out this like Skyping while somebody is physically moving the pieces around? Are you rough sketching?
So we met up for a long weekend and we did the majority of it. But then Rich and Chuck live both in Dallas, and then they grew it out. And basically that was just like you said, Facebook. Facebook, audio, video, messenger, and send me photos and change this, change that. So, we just try to stay in touch as much as we could during that period of time.
That would be so nerve-wracking if I was the guy on your team that had to grow out the plants for 3/4 of a year. That would put so much stress on me. I would be looking for algae every single day before I went to work to make sure that those plants are dialed in, because I feel like that you can't let the team down, right? You show up and you've got blackbeard algae covering your plants.
Yeah, believe me, Chuck and Rich were both sweating it. I was in Chuck's house, and he was diligent. I'm meticulous, and I think it comes through in my aquascaping that everything has to be just perfect. So for me to be the lead on that and just watching over his shoulder the whole time, I'm sure it was just extremely stressful for him. Sorry, Chuck.
Well, I mean, it worked
Hope
out.
It was worth it, buddy.
No, man, I mean, it worked out fantastic. Obviously, you guys won. If you were to look at a picture of this right now or a video, obviously you don't have to say anything out loud, but are there a couple elements in here still with your meticulous eye where you kind of cringe and are like, I wish I could change that?
Honestly, so if I critique it, I just see all the flaws. I would have, if I had the time and the materials and stuff, I would have changed probably 99% of it. But that's just me. It's just my nature. It was good, but anything can be better, and that's just who I am. And then the Indonesian style too does not really speak to me. It's not my, it's not my favorite style. It might be my first and last Indonesian type aquascape.
So let's talk about if I hit the Powerball, right? I don't know if somebody's already won it at this point, but it was like $1 billion, whatever it was. If I hit the Powerball and I said, guys, I want to buy this exact setup, I want to put it up in my house. Looking at the plants that you have on here, this seems like something that could be an actual permanent setup.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was worried about the roots, but there was some decay off of them, some sloughing off of the outer layers, but they stabilized, and I think they'll last quite a while. I was actually surprised with that because I thought for sure it would decay and just rot away after time. But the tank was wet from June. I saw it at the end of October, and the roots were just fine. So that surprised me.
Oh, and so you guys actually, when you put all of the pieces of trunk and tree together and vines, you actually had already affixed the plants to it and then let it grow out for a few months?
Correct.
Oh,
yeah. So
okay.
Probably, So all of the Anubias and all the boosts and the moss on those pieces grew out. So, especially the moss, you can't get that. The Anubias and boosts we could have done at the end and get the same effect, but not the moss. moss has to grow out. You put it on in a thin layer and you trim it every couple of weeks and break back tight so it's only about a 1/4 inch, and then you fill in the gaps. You use a little super glue and take some of your trimmings and fill in the gaps and just keep doing that. And Chuck and Rich did that for 3 months to get that really full moss look.
Wow. And so now, were the pieces, were they maintained in separate tanks, or did you guys try to keep it together as much as possible throughout that duration?
Yeah, so it was all in the same tank. Chuck had a 90-gallon tank, and he put the entire aquascape in there and just maintained it inside that 90-gallon. And we knew the dimensions of the tank going into the contest. So, even though that we grew out in a bigger tank, we knew it was going to fit into our smaller competition tanks. No problem. But yeah, he grew it out. Even like, so when you first see the aquascape, the spiderwood has a reddish, hue to it, and the roots were kind of a yellowish look to them. And, they don't look right at first, but by soaking it and letting it grow out, it all becomes that nice dark brown, all the same color tone.
I sound like a broken record. This tank is absolutely fantastic, and to hear you say that, you see a lot of things that you would still want to change, even having won first place in the Fans Choice Award. I'm going to say it with love. I think you're crazy. This tank is fantastic,
yeah,
man.
I think you're not the only one.
So, I mean, how heartbreaking was it to tear it down though at the end of the competition?
This one wasn't heartbreaking at all. I knew it was temporary, and like I said, it just didn't. It wasn't my style, and I saw the flaws, and I was so happy for my team that we could take first in People's Choice, especially after the disappointment from the year before. It was a nice redemption, but I didn't feel any attachment to this aquascape. No, I've had ones where I've tore down that were just heartbreaking, just absolutely perfection. And like my PLC scape from this year, it placed 84th, and I pulled the plug on it 2 months early to set up for the China International Aquascaping Contest, which had a deadline, I think it was July 15th. So I only had 3 months, even pulling the plug early on my PLC entry, and pulling the plug on that, it just hurt. The tank was so easy to maintain. It was just gorgeous. The fish were so awesome, and yeah, that just really hurt.
Now, see,
but it was worth it.
Right there.
The Chinese.
I was going to say, right there is where multiple tank syndrome kicks in, and you just move that tank to somewhere else in the house, and you just leave it running.
Yeah, I wish I could. My wife and I made a deal way back when I started doing the aquascape, and she said, actually before even the aquascaping, she said that I could do whatever I wanted in my office. She wouldn't care. So go nuts. So I have my tanks in there. I actually have a reef tank as well. So I have a reef tank and a planted tank, and that's all I have room for. That's all I have the wall space for. So she was smart. She lets me do whatever I want, but she knew it would be contained. There's no way I could get out of hand.
Did she say that you couldn't expand the office? Was she clever enough to state that?
I'm not so devious.
I'm just saying, man. If there's a loophole, right? Like, I mean, I just went ahead. I commandeered a bedroom. I commandeered a bedroom, and then my wife was like, "All right, you can just build out a room in the garage." And so, something that I thought was going to be, 2 or 3 years down the road at a minimum, is almost done now. So that's for another conversation. But I can appreciate respecting the wishes of the significant other.
I've honored the spirit of the agreement.
Good on you, Jeff. So, Jeff, I want to say, man, thank you very much for taking time to talk to me about your journey in aquascaping, and just really, spending a lot of time to break down and talk about this wonderful tank that you and your team Dysfunctional, put together. You guys did a fantastic job. It was great to see all of the aquascaping teams working feverishly, at least what looked feverishly to me, but obviously being able to produce quality product at the end of the day that was just so visually appealing. So thank you for giving us kind of that in-depth behind-the-scenes look that I don't think we get that, right? We don't get that kind of experience to hear firsthand the journey that a tank went through to get to this perfected product, at the end of the day. So again, thank you very much. And I want to give you a chance, how can people reach out to you? And I know also you do speak at clubs as well. So if you want to let people know how they can get a hold of you and, what avenues to look you up.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I believe in sharing these aquascapes. I think it makes the world a better place. I know just my teammates, the competitors we are up against were very good friends. Just everyone there. It was just such a great atmosphere. It was just an honor to be there and aquascaping with everyone. To get a hold of me, I actually am recently retired. I retired from my second career. I was an IT consultant, and I shut down my business in April, and just recently started Jeff Miotke Aquascaper. So you can find me at jeffmiotke.com. That's JEFFMIOTKE.com. And the point I'm at in life, I'm in a good place, and I want to share my insights, my experience, and my passion of aquascaping with with everyone. So my main goal is to travel the country, talk to clubs, and share aquascaping with all my friends or soon-to-be friends, as well as additional services on top of that. But that's my main goal. And I can be reached at Instagram, again, jeffmiotke.com, or Facebook, Jeff Miotke Aquascaper. I love to help people. I do a lot of it. So feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, awesome. And then you will also be at AGA 2019, right, in Seattle?
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm on the alternate speaker list. I have a canned talk right now called Competitive Aquascaping, and then in quotes, or how to make your aquarium awesome. So that's gone over really well. The feedback from audience has been overwhelming, and I've really enjoyed that. So I have that ready to go. So if you have a local fish club looking for a speaker, I'd be more than happy. I'd be honored to give that talk to your club.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. There's kind of two things in there to unpack. One is I would love to have you come up to Seattle to just talk at our fish club. So I don't think we've had an aquascaping specific talk in maybe last year. I don't think we had one last year, but nonetheless, I'll see if we can pull some strings and get you up here. But also for AGA though, fantastic. Man. I mean, if anybody listening to this is in the greater Pacific Northwest area, if you're across the border in Vancouver, you have no excuse to miss out on AGA Convention 2019. It's going to be in the greater Seattle area, Renton in specific, which is just right next to the airport. That is going to be good times. I think it's in May next year. So you've got months and months in advance to plan for that trip if you're local. If you're not local, again, you've got months and months to plan to come and meet people like Jeff Miotke. I'm sure you'll be participating in some of the workshops, or maybe you're going to give a talk, or just mingle and pick your brain in a side conversation. So, there's going to be more to come from me on just AGA 2019 and talking about that with some other people here in the future. But nonetheless, come and you can hang out with me and you can hang out with Jeff Miotke in Seattle. Absolutely beautiful place in May, if it is May, which I think it is. Either way, come to Seattle, check it out. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Become an AGA member. It's a fantastic group of people. If you're into aquariums, especially planet tanks, you cannot miss this.
Yeah, no, definitely. The what is it? Oh, God, I'm going to embarrass myself right now. Aquatic Gardeners Association, right?
Correct.
Yes, there we go. I know my acronyms on the fly. So yeah, definitely check that out. Jeff, again, man, thank you very much for coming on the Aquarius podcast and talking about your journey and that wonderful, wonderful tank that you and Team Dysfunctional put together. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure that my listeners out there also appreciated the talk as well. So you have a good night, Jeff. We'll talk to you later.
Honored to be here, and I appreciate all your kind words.
Thank you again for listening to the Aquarius podcast. As always, get involved in your local fish club, help grow this wonderful hobby, and have fun with other fish nerds.